Hello and welcome. My name is Robert Milton, and I'm the chair of the Arts Forum here at the club. Our quarterly socials provides an opportunity for members and non-members to mix and mingle, connect, and engage, and be inspired. We're very proud and thrilled to kick off this first quarterly social with San Francisco legendary poet laureate, Jenny Lind. Her poetry will definitely inspire you all tonight. A little bit about the poet. So Jenny Lind is a San Francisco current poet laureate, acclaimed poet, playwright, performer whose works reflect the rhythms, struggles, and resilience of the city we call home. She's an author of 5 poetry collections and the winner of the American Book Award. Appointed by London Breed in 2024, Lim is the first Chinese American poet laureate. Isn't that something? Yeah. Drawing inspiration from her upbringing in Chinatown and North Beach, her poetry invites us to listen more deeply to one another and to the city itself. Lim's poetry provides healing and civic voices during these dark and troubling times. Please welcome Jenny Lind to the stage. Okay. Our moderator this evening is Dion Lind. We're so thrilled and excited to have her once again. This is like your second home, right? Oh, you live upstairs, exactly, right. We like that, you know? Dion Lind is a beloved Emmy Award-winning journalist, 2-time author, and international keynote speaker. Dion made history as the first Asian American woman to anchor primary newscasts at a station in multiple major markets and is nationally recognized for her reporting on racism and violence targeting Asian Americans. Featured on Good Morning America, 2020, Nightline, and ABC News Live. For 20 years, she has transformed complex, high-stake issues into clear, compelling stories that resonate with millions. A trusted expert in media presence, Dion now helps executives and change makers communicate with their same clarity, confidence, and impact. Her work amplifying unrepresented voices have built bridges across diverse communities and sparked lasting change. Please welcome Dion Lind. Now, I'd like to take this opportunity to introduce our distinguished board member, Claudine Chang. She is certainly a trailblazer in the American Asian community in San Francisco and beyond. She would talk tonight about the club's critical role in our city and country, the relevance of poetry as a discipline of culture at this moment in time and in San Francisco. And she'll also say a couple of words about our poet laureate, Jenny Lind. Please welcome Claudine Chang.
Hi, I'm Claudine Chang. Welcome to the Commonwealth Club World Affairs. We call this place the club to some of us. We call it the club, but actually it is really an amazing civic institution that has been serving the public for 123 years. There are not that many organizations in this town that has been serving for 123 years. So when the opportunity came for me to join and be a part of it, I didn't hesitate too much because in the times that we live in, there's so much discourse and deep ideological divide in the country. It is wonderful to have a non-partisan organization whose mission remains the same as when it was founded in 1903, to inform, to educate, and to engage citizens. And having an informed public is so important. It is the core of a functional democracy. And as I was going to refer to the video, but the video would have shared with you that over the years, the club has met some of the most influential speakers and courageous voices. And this evening's program is part of that tradition, as we will hear from the voices of San Francisco Poet Laureate Jenny Lind. First, in conversation with renowned journalist and author Dion Lind. And then we are all here for a treat, as Jenny will be performing some of her poetries with the accompaniment of some very gifted musicians. And one might wonder what poetry has to do with the Commonwealth Club World Affairs. What poetry has to do? Well, poetry is relevant. It is relevant because the poets give voice to history and to the marginalized. They cover all the current topics that we care about, except that they do it with creativity, adding perspectives and emotional depth, connecting us to each other and to what's happening around us in magical ways through their words. Ginny Lim is the 9th San Francisco Poet Laureate and the first Chinese American serving in that position. I'm wondering if how many of you are familiar with the Poet Laureate program? Yeah? Oh, wow. So the library has been doing a great job. It is a 3-year position appointed by the mayor of the city and a program managed by the San Francisco Public Library. And we have with us today the person who runs our public library system, City Librarian Michael Lambert. Thank you for being here. Since the beginning of the program in 1998, with Lawrence Ferlinghetti as the first Poet Laureate of the city, as you read their names, all 9 of them, including, of course, Ginny, all of them have a deeply rooted and focus on social justice issues and some aspects of our diverse communities. Born and raised in San Francisco, Chinatown, Ginny is also a playwright and an educator, and her focus is really on the Asian American experience here in the Bay Area, and about intersectionality and about how immigrants have been shaping our city and our country. I want to thank Robert Melton again for conceiving of this program, bring us together. I hope you enjoy this engaging program, and I hope you will find inspiration in the poetry and the music you will hear this evening. Thank you.
You know, it was funny, I printed and prepared some questions, some remarks, but I don't think we need them.
No.
Because you and I have discovered we're kind of kindred spirits, aren't we?
Yeah, we're cousins, sisters, and I was telling her that we originated from Limbu, Mazu, who was a young girl who drowned somewhere in the China Sea as a child. And after she drowned, many of the fishermen around the coast would have visions of her during storms when they were out at sea. And she would guide them back to shore. And so now, up till this day, there are altars on all those old-fashioned junks and fishing boats to pray to her for protection. So and my father told me this because we are part of the Lim Clan Association, family association. All the family clans have associations in Chinatown, and he says our lineage goes back to her. So that's what binds us as women here and sisters.
It's so interesting too, because as Jenny and I were talking earlier today, we realized we actually have a lot of parallels, not only in the way we think, but also our careers, because Robert and Claudine failed to mention that you actually had a career in journalism way back when.
Back in the late 60s, I got interested in journalism, thought I wanted to be like Dion Lim, a reporter. And there was a program that was going, funded by the Ford Foundation. They were going to train persons of color and train them to become future broadcast journalists and print journalists. And I saw this in the TV Guide, and I was living at New York at the time, and so I tried for the job, and I got selected. At that time, I was actually a copy girl at CBS News. In those days, they had the ticker tape and the Reuters machines, and as a copy girl, you had to run. You'd hear the alarm. That meant there was a breaking story, and you had to rip the copy and run it to the proper editors. So I was really good at that. I was very fast at ripping and running. And then when I saw that announcement, I said, I'm working for CBS News. I'm going to apply for that job. And then I got selected. And CBS News, I think they were like chagrined, go, oh my God, what are you going to do with this kid? Yeah. And so they farmed me out to one time to the Atlanta Bureau, and I covered some local fire story. And then they shipped me off to CBS News, which is a huge bureau covering maybe 8 to 10 states, and it's a tiny, and we're in the back of WBBM, a small station, and the Wounded Knee story broke. 1973, and lo and behold, all the correspondents and reporters were out covering stories in the hinterlands, and I was the only one with my union card, AFTRA card, was allowed to go out with a camera crew. And they said, they thought, oh my God, we're going to have to send this intern, this rookie, with a camera crew. And I wasn't prepared for that breaking story. I had stacked heels like this, and off we went. We had an Indian guide take us through to we had every time the searchlights came, because the FBI and were all, surrounding the hamlet with armored personnel carriers. So we were told to just flatten ourselves on the ground every time the searchlights came, because we didn't want to be found out, because we wanted to get in and cover the story. So we marched through the cow pastures, got into the hamlet, and they discovered that we were in there, and then we were trying to send our stories out. I was so naive. I wasn't politicized or anything in those days, but I saw what I saw, and I met the Native Americans, the AIM leaders, Russell Banks, and interviewed the hostages, and we were more scared of being massacred than, of the Indians. They were just like a little band. They had rifles, and, just a small band of Native Americans. So we all thought that, oh my God, they don't know we're in here, we're going to get killed. And I began my story with the quote, "It's a good day to die." And and then, of course, when the assignment editor, I said, "Oh, you're going to use my story?" He said, "Use your story. It's in the trash where it belongs." And they pulled me out immediately. But lo and behold, they sent in someone else, Jeff Williams, who was a Vietnam War correspondent. And he went in there. He actually spoke a little Sioux. They didn't like his coverage either, and so he didn't last very long. So it wasn't just because I was a dumb intern, it was. I said, "Oh my God, I'm so naive not to have realized that that I can't just say what I want."
The story is so remarkable in itself, but also because you were one of the only Asian American women working in network news at the time. And I love this because you told me when you departed after you said that line of yours, that it was actually the best decision that you could have made, the best turn of events, because it led you into becoming a storyteller of a different kind.
Absolutely. I realized then that, I have such a big mouth. And the only place that I could actually speak my truth would be as a creative writer, as a poet. And so that's how I became a poet. I never, dreamt about wanting to be a poet. It was just like wanting to be an astronaut in those days, it's not an option for Asian American women. And so that, by hook or crook, it found its way to me.
But my question when I found out that you became a poet in this manner is, what on earth did you tell your parents? Because Asian mom and dad, oh, no.
Well, they were actually not as unhappy with me being a poet as they were when I was in a rock band.
Also think you're learning about Jenny now.
Right. I was just, I was soul searching. I just was trying to find myself. And so I put in all these trappings. I'm going to be a lead singer in a rock band. I can sing. And then I was Asian with all white guys in a white band called Glass Mountain. And then we, did the circuit. And then the band broke up. And then I moved to New York. And I decided at that time that, the evolution, the music was, interesting, but it wasn't evolved. And I felt that jazz was more in Indian music, were more evolved music. So I wanted to learn more about that. And I moved to New York and immersed myself in that world. And for almost 6 years.
Wow.
Hung out with jazz musicians, and my first book of jazz poems in tribute to jazz legends will come out next April during National Poetry Month, under City Lights. So unfortunately, wasn't ready for you today, but that was the path I took.
And your path I find very intriguing because it's storytelling in so many different forms. And especially now, I think that storytelling and representation are more important than ever. Can you tell me a little bit about the reason why you think that's true?
I think you have the answer, but I'll let you talk a little bit about your experience about that. It's because we don't just want to be an Asian face in the media. I don't just want to write safe poems about, how wonderful our culture is and our food and on and on. I want to talk about, what our struggles were, what my parents went through. My mother never learned to speak English, and it was in some ways her way of making sure that we would maintain our culture, because she knew that once we lost the language, the culture would also go. And that's true, because language, I have a poem about that, which I'll share later, is the boat that carries our culture. And the mother tongue is what we hear first. And so you may be a pretty face on the news and, just read your script. But what happens if that story you're covering is, is counter to your understanding of your culture, and you want to tell the truth about Asian violence, but the news media doesn't want you to amplify it in the way you want to talk about it. And then you have to make that choice. You have a moral conscience. Do you really want to take that risk and put your head on the chopping block and lose your job? Or do you need to tell that your truth for your community to bring awareness to a problem? Because it was a real problem during the pandemic, and Dionne really exposed that. And, she took a big risk doing that, and I really respect that. And I don't see that many reporters and people in the media willing to take that risk. That's your bread and butter. That's your reputation, your image. So, and I've always done that with my poetry. I'm not, shied away from political themes. And I've taken flack for some of the statements I've made, in my poetry. I mean, poetry isn't like music. You can write about revolution, and you can't change what's printed black and white or what comes out of your mouth. But if you're playing revolution, well, it can be interpreted in so many ways. So we really, because we use the word as our weapon, it carries with it such a weight that, either you have to take it or leave it.
And I love so much because now, more than ever, there are so many different ways that we can share our gifts and these stories with the world. And for example,
Right.
being here at the Commonwealth Club, now there is the wide world of social media and different platforms, and it's really exciting. But I think with it comes a great amount of responsibility.
Right, yeah.
Yeah. And you've chosen tonight to accompany your work with two really interesting artists.
Right.
Yeah.
I can't wait to bring them on. Chris Trinidad plays the bass, and he's also both of them are doctorates, and he also teaches theology. And these guys, that are coming up now, are so talented and multifaceted. He's a Canadian-born Filipino American, and Phil Baik. I have to pronounce Korean correctly. He's a young Korean American pianist and also a physicist. and a polyglot, speaks all these languages.
Oh,
and
how
it'll-
many languages is that? 6?
I don't know, but he was like, "Yo, you speak Mandarin?" And he go blah 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 blah, and you know. But yeah, so they're so talented, and you'll hear their music, that part of them. But that's the whole thing about immigration: is that why do you want to exclude talent that's coming in to contribute to your country, to make it richer, to bring in culture, to bring in food and art, and you know we can embrace and share it all. Why do you need to deport, you know, families and separate families? And we, you know, it's just like I'm suffering right now from a profound cognitive dissonance. We have the Artemis 2 circling around the moon, and we're all so happy and celebratory about that. At the same time, we're bombing Lebanon and Iraq and Iran into the Stone Age, and like, how do you hold these contradictions that we're faced with? It's really mind-blowing, and I think people are really stressed and suffering because it's too much. It's just too much for a person to, you know, deal with.
To process. I know
Yeah.
many people have deleted their social media or
Yeah, won't
refused
watch.
to engage
Yeah.
in the news because of these reasons. And I'm sure the issues surrounding birthright citizenship right now are weighing heavily on your mind.
Right, because first of all, there was never an amnesty given for paper sons and daughters. Those are the people that came in under the Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882. You know, that, and they were all many of my parents and your parents and grandparents who came in under false names because all Chinese were excluded from entering except exempt classes. They had to be doctors, lawyers, diplomats, or you know, merchants. So how a good 90% of them claim merchant status, and so they would memorize the biographies of former immigrants who came in often before the Exclusion Act, or were actual merchants, and they would sell their slots to incoming immigrants, and they would memorize it, and upon entering Angel Island, they would destroy their coaching books, and they would test it on those stories, the narratives of the birthrights they were claiming. And so if they failed, they were deported, and if they passed, they entered. And lo and behold, some of the ones who were truly who they claimed to be were deported because they didn't bother to memorize like how many stairs lead up to your temple village gate and things like that. So, and there was a lot of corruption in that system anyway, and the judges were not trained in the judiciary. They were clerks that, you know, because they didn't really care, you know, these were just immigrants. So they just promoted clerks to become, you know, the interrogators. And so they were very arbitrary in their questioning. So those poems that were written on the walls, I'll share a couple of them with you later on, were carved and written. If you go to Angel Island, you'll see they're still there. And we discovered them through a park ranger in 1970. And so Himmark Lai, a local historian who the Chinatown Branch Library is named after, wonderful historian and friend, and Judy Young, who was the librarian at the first Asian American library in Oakland. We were working for a bilingual Chinese, well, volunteering, actually, East-West bilingual newspaper in Chinatown. And so we heard about the discovery of the poems, and we went out to the island, and then we, you know, decided we wanted to translate them and give them to the public, so for the community. That lo and behold, 2 former detainees came forward to the library at where Judy Young was working and say, we were there, they were there at different times, but they copied all the poems while they were there on their notebooks. And so that's what we used to translate the poems on Angel Island. Himmark gave me the literal Chinese, and I rendered it into poetry, and we published Island in 1970. And no one would publish it because we were adamant we wanted a bilingual publication, not just the English. And so we got a loan from Gerbode Foundation to publish the first one, and then it took off and went into the third printing. And lo and behold, now there's been an opera about it, a play about it, a ballet about it, and writers are writing novels and on. But I was like, wow, that from 1970, and it's now 2026, that people are finally discovering that story and talking about it. So there's that lag between, history and the consciousness.
But I think that's so incredibly impactful and powerful and unbeknownst to maybe the everyday person, because when you hear poetry, right, you think of something you learn in school perhaps, but when it is tied to history like that, it can have real power behind it. Can you elaborate a little bit more on why that power is important, and for those who may not necessarily believe in this art form?
Well, when that poetry is based on, a historical fact or personal experience, it really validates the veracity of that event or that time, that moment in time for that people. And for the Chinese who were detained on Angel Island, I didn't realize it for many years until after I had translated the poems that they were the manifestation of the first Chinese American poetry ever written on these shores. And so my lineage actually goes back to those poets on Angel Island, because they were not representing the Chinese poetry from overseas China. They were the first voices of the Chinese American experience, and that experience was one of exclusion, unfortunately, and which is, we're seeing that played out again today with the ICE, and I'm wondering, like in the detention centers, there's probably no place where they could write or record their stories.
Yeah. So who will be able to document it? Yeah. Before we get to the rest of our program, could you share with everyone your hope of the takeaway from what they'll be experiencing on stage here?
Well, I think we all have our, political beliefs. We all have our cultural biases, and we're not perfect people. We're human. There's things we like. There's things we don't like, and but when push comes to shove, we have to ultimately face the fact that we are all one. We all just biologically came from the same DNA out of Africa, if you believe the Rift Valley theory, that was the origin. And then from there, I did the National Geographic Genome Project, and my ancestry showed up as Chukchi, which is the Siberian ancestry on my mother's side. And so if you go back, and do your genealogy, you'll probably find out that you're other than you thought you were, and that you were, originally Native American, people find out, or they were actually Aryan. And so there's a lot that belies our understanding of who we really are, and it's really not important what your background or ancestry was. It's what you claim, what you experience. Like, I don't claim I'm, from the reindeer people, even though my DNA says so, because I was raised as a Chinese American by Chinese American parents. So that's my cultural experience, and I identify with that. But on the other hand, that makes me aware of, like, if I have indigenous blood, I need to be more cognizant of that, the plight of indigenous peoples, and that we all need to be more cognizant of the other, and because the other is often part of you, and you just don't realize it. So, the takeaway is that we really have to look past our divisions right now. Are we going to just, ultimately destroy ourselves as a civilization? Because we're on the precipice now. And I think each person has that ultimate responsibility in whatever you're doing. If you're a teacher, a fireman, a news journalist or a poet, whatever you can do to make that transformation, to transmute whatever is negative into something positive, it's going to be exponential. But if you don't have that belief and just say, it's the government, I'm just checking out, forget it, I'm just going to see if I can have enough in my retirement fund and that's all I care about, and that's what happens when you don't care about the other. You just, we're so individual driven and centralized that we've forgotten what community is. And that's what most of our cultures come from, community and faith and belief and ritual and ceremony. And we've come so far away from that. And our kids aren't being educated on ethics. They're only, encouraged to be competitive. And so you don't have a balance, and everyone's trying to beat the other, and how does that feel to be always on the losing end? So we're really, we've got to do better as compassionate people.
Jenny, thank you for your words. Thank you for...
I don't mean to preach.
No, not at all. Thank you for that dose of inspiration. You are an inspiration to so many, and to myself included. I cannot wait for everyone to see your program. Everyone, Jenny Lim.
Thank you. And Dion, really respect her. In honor of the Artemis II successful mission, I did a production called Facing the Moon, Songs of Diaspora with Delso Quartet. And I'll read one of the poems. Actually, this book, if you buy a copy of Island, you get a free copy of Facing the Moon, Songs of Diaspora poems. And otherwise, you can sliding scale from $5 to $10. Okay, I'll share this poem called The Holy Book. The moon is a holy book, burdened with the sufferings of the world. All the verses and chapters, footnotes stored and redacted, memorized in her enigmatic form. The moon is a clock, marking seasons, tables, and tides, the misfortunes of history and exile. A lamp shining over memories, a shimmering hope illuminating the darkness, the Scheherazade of silence, stories hidden in her heart. She maps the distance to freedom for the dispossessed, for the lovers who return each night in search of Eros's flames, and for every child who dreams. Thank you. This is a poem from Angel Island that was written on the wall. Time flew like a shooting arrow. Already a cool autumn is past. Counting my fingers, several months have elapsed. And still, I'm only at the beginning of the road. I have yet to be interrogated. My heart is nervous with anticipation. Mother tongue. This is for my sisters, Nellie Wong, who we lost several months ago, and her sister, Flo Oi Wong, who is in the ER in the hospital, and we're praying for her. And they were part of the last Khoisan poets, the three of us. And it's very saddened by the loss and the impending loss, it looks like, for Flo, mother tongue. Khoi, here. Nien, there. They spoke my dialect, Khoisanwa. And language, I said, is the boat that delivers memory across the sea of time, time and seasons, steady and strong, like hands that coax childbirth. Luin chim luin, ngồi em lying in tongue. Luin chim luin, ngồi em lying in chuan. Chuan chim chuan len, chuan ngồi kim bang, chuan ngồi ho, chuan ngồi chew. Duck eggs preserved in mud, with their yolks orange as persimmon. Village cures for night sweats, nightmares, fainting and flatulence, shared among a cabal of Khoisan sewing women. The mother tongue that shamed us, that was archived like Yaqui in annotated bibliographies with footnotes and diacritics, which the keepers of tongues copyright for publication. Khoi, here, Nien, there, or year. No English spoken here. The accent's got a swing like the tail of an ox pulling its cart along the Mekong or Pearl River Delta. We were curios, country folk who followed the crooked path to a yoked dream called Meiko, beautiful country, like Ishi, frozen in time. They say we really never left China. Their clay yip voices hang on my tongue. Thick, tough drawl, tasting of jingok bang, the tip alighting on the upper palate, ascending and descending like a gull in a cave with its plumage clipped. I wait and wait in the echoing gloom of postmortem interrogations, nervous as the raven flies. A rice bin, a temple well, emptied, a paper memory, tossed into the sea. This is all. They've left us. The children were laid to rest behind locked doors with graffiti etched in couplets of despair. The night moon parses its golden light on the words, I will cross this barrier. Nekilmot Myanga, what is your name? Nekinen Chutsaya, what year were you born? How many houses in your village? Khoi here, Nien there. Moon chim. Mother watches like a barn owl under the drooped lid of the moon. She dreams of fireflies under the bridge, of capturing their flickering light. She dreams of wolves and seals swimming swift and steadily across the frozen Pacific to survive. Another voice from Angel Island. Instead of remaining a citizen of China, I willingly became an ox. I intended to come to America to earn a living. The Western-styled buildings are lofty, but I have not the luck to live in them. How was I to know that my dwelling place would be a prison? Aliens. They called us aliens. Time broke in spite of hope. Time froze in the detention camp on the island. There's no turning back. The hour, the day, the moment forever etched in your flesh. You got a family photo that won't wash away. Hope is canceled in one voided entry. No passport, no green card. The one and only route to be smuggled through the traffickers of paper names as water floods the roads, cresting in the cove where they lay siege to the hunt. We hear them laughing at us. Memory drives a knife to cut out the wound of denial, like the wolf who chewed off her own foot to be free. That's us. Nothing can be seen. Below the moon, the raging waves, your cries fade to silence. Oh, what's done is done. Get over it. You hear them saying over and over, laughing, stumbling over a tattered English phrase book, crushed beneath their feet. There are tens of thousands of poems composed on these walls. They're all cries of complaint and sadness. The day I am rid of this prison and a mass success, I will remember this chapter once existed. In my daily needs, I must be frugal. Needless extravagance leads youth to ruin. All my compatriots should be mindful. Once you have some small gains, you must return home early. Run from Shangshan. Sweet river of night, spill over the bay with your bright red orange flames. Let the blood of paradise scorch the rooftops and the trees and our desperate hearts. It's no illusion the city's on fire from within. Guanggung, god of war and poets, after your star-hopping binge with the cowherd's daughter, please beg King Yan, the god of death, to postpone our destruction. Put on trial mankind's failure to end wars and disasters should result in a murder conviction. Now, if the snake and the peacock can bury the hatchet, one crawling on his belly, unable to see the light, the other rising to the heights without any self-reflection, buried in bitcoins and profit margins with their heads in the sand, there might be some accountability in the story of two worlds, history and allegory. But poetry isn't poetry, and words aren't just words. A pigeon pecks at the crumbs of meaning in a homeless encampment where a dog sleeps by a woman in a bed of cardboard and dew. A block away, Chinatown takes off her dress of corrugated metal and plastic like a rejected bride ashamed of her own body. Oh, there must be a truce in the city. Oh, the sounds unleashed in the throats of chickens about to be butchered and children masked and shuttered behind sobbing walls should break the heart of any soldier or politician. Lights from the empty offices of skyscrapers flicker like stars through the fortress of illusion. I hear a mother's heart breaking in me. There must be a dream for the sky to become real. There must be a boat for the wind to carry memory, and a God to whisper the names of our dead, to whom death means nothing. Oh, sweet river of night, spill over the bay with your bright red orange moon. I am still here. It's a new year. It's no illusion. The city is still here. I feel like singing. The water is wide, I cannot cross. Neither do I have wings to fly. Give me a boat that can carry two, and both shall row. My love and I. There is a boat. She sails the sea. She's loaded deep, as deep can be, but not as deep as the love I'm in. I know not how I sink or swim. Let's swim together. Thank you. Chris Trinidad, until bye. Thank you. My last poem, The Journey. Though we cannot be together at all times, may the blessings of our ancestors protect us. Though we cannot change the course of the sun or the moon, may we persevere in this place of wind and darkness, like the cuckoo who returns from far-off lands to sip the fruit of liberation. How joyful it would be if we could see the faces of our descendants, children radiant as stars. You know, the pursuit of freedom is filled with hardship, and to persevere through life is a struggle. Sorrow is the immigrant's fate, their gift to their fellow beings who come after. It is the truth of freedom, that powerful illumination, that bright, clear light that cuts through the ignorance of hatred, fear, and injustice. The spirit of hope and determination, that is the immigrant's sword to dispel the darkness of this world. The spirit of change and transformation, that is the immigrant's dream, to end man's inhumanity to man with equality, peace, love, tolerance, and compassion. That is the ultimate revolution. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Bless you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Please stay and talk to us. We'll be here for the book signing and to mingle and talk with you. See you in a bit. Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much.